Dua is the best way to ask for something. And you have that. You have qiyam and ruku' and sujood. And these are the best motions of the body. And you're bringing light in the process to every single part of your existence, even physically. You're bringing nur to yourself. Nur in the heart, light on the tongue, light to the ears, and light to every single one of your limbs. He says that the angels, the earth, the mountains, the rivers, they all rejoice at your prayers. And you're inspired towards righteousness in a way that your loved ones rejoice at your prayer as well. Because they see that the salah is generating, a meaningful prayer is generating a meaningful change in your character. And just like fasting has farhatan, has two joys. When you break your fast here and you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with it, you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with your salah in complete joy. Because the standing before Allah on the Day of Judgment is going to be determined by the standing before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this dunya. And so you think about Allah calling you to a banquet, inviting you to a banquet, how you come to that banquet. How clean are you? How respectful are you? How attentive are you to that banquet? Where are you sitting at that banquet? How much are you paying attention? All of that is important. And Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu said that if our hearts were right, that they would never get enough of the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he gives this example, rahimahullah ta'ala, ibn al-Qayyim. He says, imagine a starving person who comes to a feast and all they do is they take one handful of food and they just put it in their mouths and they leave. So this is the example of a person that is completely in ghafla, completely in heedlessness. And Allah Azza wa Jal calls them to an act to where they could completely immerse themselves in something beautiful, transformative, but they only take a handful and they abandon that table. And so the drought of the heart is called ghafla. It's heedlessness. And that's being distant from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And salah is the purification of ghafla, the ultimate purification of heedlessness. Aqim as-salata bi dhikri, establish the prayer for my remembrance. And when the heart is watered with the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the branches become moist and they produce all sorts of fruits and vegetables and beneficial things. Allah Azza wa Jal also says in the Quran, أَلَمْ يَأْنِ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَمَا نَزْلَ مِنَ الْحَقِّ. Isn't it time for those who believe to humble their hearts through the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what He has revealed of the truth? Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he says about this verse, he says, the time between us becoming Muslim, accepting Islam, and the revelation of this verse was 4 years. Meaning Allah rebuked us after 4 years of being Muslim that your hearts are becoming rusty. Your hearts are becoming hard. Do not let your hearts become distant from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah Azza wa Jal admonished us to come back and to immerse ourselves in khushoo. And so we're past the condemnation of alladhina hum an salatihim sahun, those who are forgetful with their prayers. And we're now to the admonishment of, isn't it time to humble your heart to the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the truth that He has revealed. And so in that, what does khushu' mean? When someone says, I want khushu', what exactly are they asking for from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So let's go through some of the terms. There's the word khashya. Khashya. Khashya refers to internal reverence, the awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so khashya is one ingredient. Then there is khudu'. And khudu' refers to external reverence. Okay, so the external reverence of the limbs. Khushu' is the combination of external and internal reverence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's when the internal reverence of Allah produces the external reverence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. And if there's a definition for the word khushu', I know that sometimes we define it as humility. The definition of khushu' would most accurately be silence. Silence, stillness, quiet. But it's not just an external quiet. You know, someone could be listening to me speak and their minds are everywhere else. Not you all, of course, but someone could be listening to someone speak to them and their minds are completely preoccupied with something else, right? Khushu' is when what is ahead of you is so great that you're silent on the inside as well. That you're not thinking about anything else. That everything is focused on the matter that's ahead of you. And what do we take this from? It's like when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the Day of Judgment, وَخَشَعَتِ الْأَصْوَاتُ لِلرَّحْمَنِ فَلَا تَسْمَعُ إِلَّا هَمْسًا. That all of the voices are silenced in the presence of Ar-Rahman. And so you wouldn't even barely hear a whisper.